And we're live. I'm here with Sarah Beth. Welcome, Sarah Beth.
Hi, great to be back.
Yeah, for sure. And you've been on the podcast, so if anyone enjoys this, please do check out the podcast episode with Dr. Sarah Beth Burke. It's so good. We talk about how to be a hybrid professional, but check out the podcast for all that goodness. She's got a great book on it. There it is, right there, and we go into a lot of detail on that. And today, we're going to talk about. I love talking about meetings, and Sarah Beth hasn't been doing so many meetings lately, but in the pre-show chat, we talked about in presentations and how do we engage groups. And so want to just talk to you about how just some of those challenges that you run into just with that shift from, smaller group meetings to engaging larger audiences in this virtual setting.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, I'm obsessed with hybridity, and hybridity is about combining old and new things together to try something new and different. And that's what we've all been doing right now in this new hybrid COVID world. So I, like you, care about engaging audiences, whether it's a meeting or a presentation. And I came across this tool. Actually, it's a startup company called Splashmob. And what it enabled me to do is embed a QR code during my presentation slides. And I know we're all really familiar with QR codes, but this has a special twist. The QR code actually takes over someone's smartphone. And as the facilitator, I'm on my tablet on the side with literally a control board. And I can choose what screen is showing up on someone's smartphone at any given time during the presentation. So it's awesome. Imagine you're looking at a slide and I'm talking about a thing, and suddenly your smartphone shows up with this screen, and it has like maybe a text box or something to put information in, or a quick poll is right there, or a call to action button because I want them to go somewhere. The developers even worked with me to do some custom content where people could tap on different words, and then that became this new diagram in another screen. So I've been really experimenting with using smartphone-enabled technology with presentations to really capture my audience and make them feel more a part of what I'm doing. It's been awesome.
Yeah, and so what have you noticed as you've kind of leaned in as far as like what's really worked and what you appreciate about
Yeah.
kind of engaging in that way?
Um, well, I mean, just from like a metrics quantitative point of view, when I did it without this Splash Mob app in the past, and I did things like put a link in the chat and click this during Zoom, or like, here's, a QR code, just go to this thing. You can do, tracking links on those. And if I had 50 people attending that presentation, maybe like 10, 20 at the most might click that thing. But when I used Splash Mob, my engagement was 50% or higher. That many people were on their phone. I could see how many people were on the screen in that moment, how many people were clicking the thing, and my engagement was just like 10xing. And so that's why it was so much more powerful.
That's really great. Anytime we can kind of give an offer and have a tool to support that offer and get people engaged, it's so much more, I don't know, it's so much more meaningful. It's so much more fun as a facilitator
So
too.
much more fun. I think people appreciate it because they're kind of bored and they're doing email on the side and they're like nodding their head like they're watching. But if you literally have someone interacting with content and they can touch it, that's a game changer. I think we need more of that in this new online hybrid, presentation meeting world we're doing.
Speaking of hybrid, I've been thinking about hybrid a lot lately, and just from the perspective of in-person and virtual coming together. And
Mhm.
there's so many tools that focus on in-person experiences. There's so many tools that focus on remote, and where the facilitator is matters, right? Like if
Yep.
the facilitator's in the room with you, the person in the room are going to have an improved experience. If the facilitator is remote, then the remote people are going to have a better experience.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's going to be a whole new set of features and tools and functionality to support this emerging um, phenomenon, if you will, because I don't
Mhm.
think people aren't going to go back. People are have that, like this notion of going back to normal is like I don't think it's I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a concept to me that's going to manifest.
I think a lot of things are here to stay, and it's sort of like if you're going to offer something in person, it has to also be co-hosted online so you can get people on demand or virtual with the people at the thing. It's really like now all the tools are going to have to be used, kind of like we started first just using Facebook, and now you have to use Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, like all the platforms, because that's where you find people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think all these tools have pros and cons. And at the end of the day, it's all about best practice and good learning, right? Like people remember 10% of what they hear, like 40% of what they see, and 90% of what they do. So you've got to still make it interactive somehow.
Yes, absolutely. Allowing people to get hands-on and embracing. I a friend of mine, his company is going to have their holiday party completely in VR this year. So they bought everyone
Wow.
Oculus headsets,
Oh my gosh.
and I think it's going to be a game changer
Yeah.
because we've got headsets that are now $300 and they're completely self-contained, so no wire, and it's
Wow.
not Bluetooth into some other CPU. You don't have to buy anything else. You've got a computer like
Yeah.
in front of your face, and I think I've said for years, once the hardware becomes ubiquitous, it's going to take off like crazy. I mean, why wouldn't it?
Totally.
I mean,
Well, it's
so
hitting the wave, right? When technology can meet demand, and like we finally have these headsets now and the price point is right and the video quality is better and the streaming and downloading is there. It's like boom, magic. It's going to happen.
yes.
I've seen conferences now where people send you a kit or a package of all the things you need. So when you're attending these online sessions, it's like a DIY. You can do it together. I think that's brilliant. Like they send you cocktail ingredients to make the like happy hour drink, and they send you this kit to do this like workbook thing. You've got to be inventive, and there's more preparation, I think, right now. People aren't realizing, I think it takes more work to be prepared for online things than maybe some in-person things.
So I love this. I love this. This is actually the app that my friend's company is going to use for their holiday party. So
Nice.
I was leaving out some details so I didn't bore people, but that is the spatial.io is where you can, if you do have a headset, you can go into spatial and do virtual meetings. And I guess the way you create your avatar is you take a photo of yourself and then
Mhm.
it turns that photo into like a 3D version of you. And so
Wow.
it actually looks like you in the meeting. It's like totally holodeck style stuff. It's awesome.
Well, imagine when these LinkedIn Lives are going to be in your Oculus and we're going to be doing
Yeah.
this 3D.
I mean, it's all coming. And I think, I've been waiting for the moment where the hardware, like I said a minute ago, where the hardware reaches that point, and now it's cheaper than a smartphone. So
That's
I think, it's the tickle me Elmo of this Christmas.
got to have the new latest and greatest.
No, and so I think I give it 2 years, and it's going to be bananas, is my guess.
Bananas, maybe even
Yeah,
faster. I
yeah.
mean, everything's changing, right? No one wants to go back.
Yeah, and even when we go back, what I mean, if we got VR headsets and we are in the room, if we're to get, yeah, it's going to be really fascinating to think about the meeting designs that
Mhm.
come about when we start accommodating for both.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know if you had an all hands meeting and someone was calling into it, it's like, okay, maybe you heard the CEO or the CFO or whoever was standing up giving a presentation. But if someone asked a question, there's no way you heard that. And so there's always the reminder, usually it's like the HR person, or maybe it's the PR person, the comms person. It's like, hey, can you repeat that question?
Yeah.
But if you don't have that kind, thoughtful person,
Mhm.
people remote or
Mhm.
not even hearing the question, and that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as
Yeah.
what's missed out. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so passive when it is kind of trying to accommodate people in person and people that are remote or on some webcam, and then the conference technology is crappy and the microphone doesn't pick it up, and it's kind of a disaster. So we've got a long ways to figure this out, but you've got my brain going on what does a 3D brainstorm session look like in Oculus
Yeah.
with post-it notes like all around you. It's going to be wild.
Well, my friend's company, 3Data, they do 3D data visualizations,
Mhm.
and I was totally fell in love with it the first minute I saw it, and because if you imagine a bubble chart, right, where you're seeing kind of like the bubbles. Now imagine they're three-dimensional. So you can
Whoa.
kind of, so your clusters don't
Yeah.
have to be just here and here. It's like
Mhm.
here, here,
Yeah.
here, so you can kind of
Yeah.
see these patterns in the data you wouldn't have otherwise. And
Right.
I was telling them, one of my dreams was, man, if you could just like automate through different permutations of what your axes are. If you have a
Yeah.
giant data set, you could have different columns just showing up on your axes until all of a sudden some weird cluster emerges and you're like, stop there. And then you can
Totally.
kind of look at the relationships. So
Yeah.
it's like
It's the
using,
XYZ axes. You get all three.
yeah, and you could, but it's like using the human brain to like notice patterns, and the patterns are just kind of washing over you. It's almost like the generative design from Autodesk, right? Let
Ooh.
the computer like just present stuff to you, and then you can say, "Oh, stop there! I want to. What is this?"
Freeze frame.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. Like swimming through data, like you're just living in it. That's going to be wild. As a
yes,
researcher, I'm trying to imagine that right now. Yeah.
it's gonna be far out, and even ethnography. I mean, if there
Mhm.
are like recordings, if people are experiencing things and doing things, that's a whole nother. I mean, this kind of gets into some data privacy stuff too, but
Yeah.
there's a whole nother element of recording experiences.
Mhm. There was a really interesting kind of immersive theater experience that was locally where I live. And this Academy Award winning guy, I think it's called like Carne and Arena, and it's about immigrants crossing the border. And they start the presentation, and I think you have to take your shoes off and put them in this like cold locker, and the whole room is cold, and you kind of get like the initial storyline, but then you put on it's some kind of VR technology and you walk barefoot in a room that's filled with sand. And as you're watching in this headset, you are talking to other immigrants and travelers and refugees and feeling what they're going through and talking to them and like having this immersive experience. It's all empathy based. So to me, that's the level of storytelling and qualitative ethnographic understanding that we can design.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
At first I was like, I had a lot of thoughts washing over me as I was thinking about the sand, and I was like, that's an interesting element because you got
Mhm.
that that just biofeedback. But
Yeah,
then
visceral.
yes, and then I started thinking about the proprioceptors we have in our feet
Mhm. Yeah,
and how that could impact just the emotions and the your interpretation of what you're seeing and hearing, right?
yeah,
You connect to it on a more physical level, on a
yeah.
deeply physical level, because the proprioceptors are like, that's some like very subtle stuff.
Oh, but that's how rich I think the future of interactivity is gonna get, like the Meow Wolf, like take you into these worlds where you don't understand reality and, digital anymore. It's just all enmeshed and everything's interconnected.
Yeah, it's like it's gonna be really interesting to see how that influences human connection. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm all for it. Yeah, I think
I can
I'm
tell.
excited. I'm
We're
kind of
early
a
adopters. We'll
future.
try
Yes.
anything.
Yes, yes. So here's a fun one for you. Our facilitation conference is coming up in gosh, it's a month and a half now, February
I just
2nd, 3rd, and
registered.
4th. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yay.
so we have a cuddle facilitator this year, and
Ooh.
I'm super excited. Just great. I think we were really proud of our diversity, not only in background and perspective, but just subject matter. Like so many different types of facilitation, and I'm really curious to see what the cuddle facilitator just has to offer us, because I can't. I know she's excited about a talk to other facilitators that are in other disciplines. So yeah, it's gonna be
Virtual
fun.
cuddling, do I understand that right?
Well, yes, yes, and she was of course a cuddle facilitator long before COVID, but
Oh,
especially in this time of COVID, the human connection is
oh, yeah.
um, it's tough. And this year our theme is connection, so I don't know. It just
There you
when
go.
I ran into that, I can't remember. I think I found it on NPR or something, but
Cool.
I was super super
I
excited.
mean, way to experiment. I mean, that's all we can do right now is take things we know are good content and see how they adapt and what else can happen with it. And everyone's just curious. I think creative people need stimulation. They need to be around, other novelty, and they want to experiment and stay curious.
I know, and I think that's one thing that so many meetings lack is novelty,
Yeah.
and novelty alone can be super powerful. And just kind of like adding some levity or mixing things up is a simple design element that I think so many people take. I don't know if they take it for granted, but they just overlook it, or they don't think they think, oh, that's a nice to have. We just need to get some stuff done,
Yeah.
and
It gets glossed over. Well,
so.
how do you even define novelty? I think people hear that and they go, yeah, we should do that. And then they're like, well, how do we make this novel?
Right. How do we get from the conceptual to the tactical, right? And go do something. I think, um, gosh, my biggest advice is stay curious. If you're
Mhm.
on the pursuit of novel, it kind of presents itself. But
I would
when we
I mean, I might even just say like novelty can come in the form of like add a great GIF out of nowhere into a slide deck. Like that will catch people's attention because you're like, oh my God, there's a pink elephant walking across this slide. It's not just more text and another image, right? Like that's novelty. It's these surprising moments that are unexpected, unusual, and out of the ordinary. And then that turns on your memory in new ways.
yeah, and how can we think about the content and some new just from a new perspective, right? And
Mhm.
'cause I think it's easy to just get in grooves.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of my favorite um, business coaches, Vern Harnish, has this awesome advice of go to a conference outside of your industry once a year.
Yeah.
That's how
That's a
you
good one.
find novelty. Mix it up. Look at what people are doing in other places, and how can you borrow from that and just be inspired. So yeah.
And that's when the neural connections start crossing wires, right? And so new ideas come from like, oh yeah, how can this weird conference on the solar system, what does that have to do with my day-to-day life and like marketing tactics? And then you're like, wait, marketing is the solar system, and boom,
Yeah.
like your brain just goes crazy.
Or it could even be as tactical or simple as like you go to that conference and someone you meet tells you about the some other new tool, or some cool way to use Zoom, and you're like, whoa. And just
Yeah.
because they're coming from a different world, I mean, stuff's just percolating. Different things are
Mhm.
getting people's attention. In fact, there is some research from Innocentive that said 70% of all new innovations already exist in a different industry.
I
And so
believe it.
it's basically just repurposing stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to invent stuff out of thin
Feel
air.
like an artist.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So how are people, if you're trying to do blockchain in agriculture, how are people trying to use blockchain in agriculture, or finance, or let's look at these different industries. In fact, my friend Steve Rader was telling me that one of his favorite innovation stories is like this potato chip company was trying to get a lower fat chip, and so there he just popped up. Look at that.
Yay!
That's hilarious. Oh my God. Speak of the devil. That is so cool. So Steve has this awesome story about this potato chip company who wanted to make a lower fat chip, and the solution came from a violinist
Wow.
because the violinist was like, "Oh, just resonate the chip, and the oil will like
Mm.
jump off it."
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That is so wild. I love
that's a
that.
novel idea, right?
Yeah,
But the violinist was like, "Yeah, this is an obvious concept to me. I resonate things all the time."
and I think the beauty of Innocentive is crowdsourcing these problems that, one industry is stuck on. Like I heard that they were trying to figure out how to make a chocolate coating that doesn't melt in your hand, right? But putting it on this website saying, anybody else know how to solve this problem? People like violinists can jump in and say, oh yeah, I have an idea.
That's right. And so, I think Steve over at NASA is really into the crowdsourcing
Mm,
concepts, right? So that's how you can tap into that outside
yeah,
innovation and who are thinking differently.
yeah.
And I guess he just gave a big shout out to John Deere, who's a leader in AI, which you might not think, right? Because I guess I
Yeah,
mentioned agriculture, but yeah, it's like you find success and innovation in the strangest places, and so you
yeah.
don't have to be a software company to benefit from AI.
Whew.
All right, we went way crazy in different directions, but that was a lot of fun, and we're a little bit over. So thank you so much for jumping on, and good luck with all your upcoming presentations, and happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays, Douglas. Love this. Can't wait to join your conference. When is it again?
It is in early February, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th.
I'll be there. Can't wait.
Looking forward
Yay
to
to
seeing you.
novelty. Take care.